The company gathering presented an opportune moment to disclose the truth. The dilemma wasn't light, but it was necessary for everyone to grasp the gravity of the situation. The room resonated with joy, echoing laughter and tinkling glasses. It mirrored the annual year-end bash, where people momentarily escaped their daily struggles and worries. Steeling myself, I anticipated the gazes that would soon fall upon me. Seizing the microphone and taking a deep breath, I began, "Good evening, all," I said, my voice measured, almost conversational. "I want to express my gratitude for another year of diligence and commitment. However, before we proceed with the festivities, there's something personal I need to share." A hush fell over the room. I observed the mixture of curiosity, surprise, and, on some faces, a veiled apprehension. Those words resonated like an explosion within the room, causing a wave of disbelief among the listeners, initially presuming it was a jest. However, my expressionless face revealed the grim truth: she was having an affair with her boss. The ensuing silence echoed deafeningly, only broken by hushed whispers of shock, curiosity, and embarrassment. Her wide-eyed gaze from across the room hinted at her attempt to blend into the crowd, as if seeking escape from my revelation. His lips moved swiftly to refute the claim. "That's not true," he yelled, trying to be heard. But his voice trembled with desperation, confirming the suspicion that everyone harbored. The glance she avoided spoke volumes, admitting her guilt. As the initial shock subsided, it transformed into an unspoken condemnation. I continued my speech without averting my gaze. "Are you implying that I fabricated it all?" A wry, weary grin tugged at my lips. "Would I risk exposing myself so brazenly if I wasn't certain? I have evidence, and merely mentioning it was enough for everyone to grasp the undeniable truth." The room seemed electrified, tension hanging heavy, as though all were waiting for my next move, the boss's, mine. But she remained silent, seemingly frozen, searching for an ally who could validate her denial, yet none dared to speak up. Even the boss, previously engaged in a distant conversation, fell quiet. His hands trembled subtly as he struggled to maintain his composure. "This is preposterous. Let's resume the festivities. This matter should not be discussed now," he declared, his voice echoing, an attempt to regain control. Whispers filled the air, some glancing at their phones, as I sensed the news was about to explode like a wildfire. The fallout wasn't merely personal, it tarnished everyone implicated. It was an open wound visible to all, irreversible. "Are you planning to deny it too?" My words didn't need to shout to be heard. Eyes were fixed on me, anticipation in the air, searching for more. I knew they were digesting every word, every subtext. For make no mistake, this wasn't just my burden. It was a problem that would somehow touch each of you. I saw faces change, as if a somber cloud covered the once lively room. The festive mood vanished, replaced by a dark, almost stifling atmosphere, and everyone knew they were bearing witness to an event that would permanently alter the company's climate. Glances were exchanged, some in disbelief, others trying to estimate the repercussions of this disclosure. Most fascinating to me was the terror on his supervisor's face. He understood that from then on, things had spiraled out of control. The facade he donned as an unblemished and honorable leader was torn apart. She attempted to approach me, her countenance flushed, a blend of rage and dread. "That's not accurate. He's fabricating. He's deranged. You can't trust this." He's struggling, but his speech dwindled as he recognized no one was heeding him. I didn't need to counter. She recognized it, and I did too, that this was the instant all her lies crumbled. "I'm leaving," he declared, attempting to push past the crowd. However, it was too late. There was no exit. The fact is, I hadn't intended to act in such a manner. The agony of being deceived, of knowing the one I relied on had plunged a knife into my back, was unendurable. But even more intolerable was knowing that the man she betrayed me with was someone I encountered daily, who oversaw everything. Many things I could endure, but this exceeded my limits. If I were to falter, it would be all-encompassing. For some betrayals, when disclosed, leave lasting scars visible to all, wounds that extend far beyond the confines of a single room. I desired for everyone to experience that hurt. Let them see the reality concealed behind their masks. When I spoke those words, when I made that revelation, I knew it would mark the start of an end. Not merely my marriage, but the edifice they had constructed on their deceit. Secrets like these don't fade in solitude. Instead, they detonate, spread, and the repercussions are always catastrophic. Since then, I knew nothing would remain unchanged. I sought to demolish what had devastated me, disregarding the potential fallout. However, I hadn't anticipated the unexpected turn of events. For in that room filled with accusatory stares and hushed whispers, there was more than merely betrayal and sordid secrets. Involved were more individuals than I had anticipated, and the repercussions of my actions that night extended further than a fractured marriage and an exposed superior. Soon, I would uncover that delving deeper might reveal more than initially expected. Some truths are so perilous they can pull everyone else down. Welcome to this channel, where the tales you'll hear are fictional, but the lesson is true. Betrayal wreaks havoc on lives. Here, we do not condone any form of deceit. Our intention is to portray how such acts can destroy relationships, families, and shatter trust between individuals. Brace yourself for an astonishing tale, laden with twists, turns, and intense emotions. Relax now and let go, as what follows will captivate you until the very end. Good story. Lucas strutted down the office hallway with a self-assured gait everyone recognized. He exuded a tranquil yet resolute demeanor, giving off an impression of unflappable competence even amidst chaos. To his peers, he symbolized professionalism and tenacity, having meticulously constructed his career through hard work and consistently exhibiting respect and fidelity towards all. Lately, though, there was a perceptible change in his eyes, fleeting distractions, prolonged gazes into the distance, and a silence that contrasted with his typically gregarious nature. To those who observed closely, it became apparent that he was grappling with an issue that weighed heavily on him. However, Lucas had always been adept at concealing his feelings. From an external perspective, Emily, his wife, appeared as if she were designed to radiate brilliance. Her long black hair cascaded in measured waves, and her effortless smile seemed to dispel any tension. She excelled at captivating crowds, be it at social events, get-togethers with friends, or work functions, which may have been one reason she was cherished within the company. Her affability was appreciated, and often Lucas's co-workers remarked on his good fortune in being her husband. Emily possessed a charismatic knack for making everyone feel valued, for being considerate and compassionate. Yet, beneath that radiant smile, there was a depth of complexity seldom glimpsed. They had been married for 12 years. Their relationship started much like others, brimming with shared aspirations and visions. Lucas was driven and aimed to advance in his workplace. He crossed paths with Emily at a business function. She was vivacious, lively, and offered a stark contrast to his more reserved personality. This immediate attraction stemmed from her apparent ability to complement her life in harmony. She transformed routine outings into remarkable experiences, filled silent moments with amusing anecdotes, which was why Lucas fell deeply in love with her. He recollected the initial phases of their relationship as a whirlwind of emotions, a respite from the mundane daily life. Over the years, they constructed a life that many might envy. They dwelled in a roomy apartment, gracefully furnished without pompousness. The walls displayed paintings Emily had carefully picked from local galleries and art events, one of her passions. Lucas always appreciated watching Emily select each piece with such precision, as if every painting harbored a tale. He believed this meticulous care was one of the factors that bonded them. She infused color into his life, while he provided her with stability and safety. However, change is inevitable, even when it's hard to acknowledge. Over the last few weeks, Lucas sensed a widening gap between them. Nothing obvious marked the change, no physical altercations nor drawn-out disputes. Instead, an oppressive quietude hung heavier than any spoken words. The tender caress that once illuminated his evenings now yielded to a chill Lucas struggled to comprehend. He started to detect Emily's increased absences, her late returns, always with an alibi at the ready supposed work functions or prolonged dinners. Though he acknowledged her demanding social life, given her role as a PR officer, there was a novel rhythm to these engagements that troubled him. Conversely, Emily seemed to be experiencing a period of thriving. She perpetually smiled, constantly engaged in something fresh, a new venture or event to organize. A vitality shone in her eyes that Lucas hadn't seen in years, but paradoxically, it only served to widen the chasm between them. Seeing her joy didn't bring him relief, but rather made him feel alienated, as if he no longer fit in that segment of her life. Efforts to discuss the situation only elicited evasive replies. "You're overthinking," she asserted, chuckling. "It's just work. I'm a bit swamped, nothing more." For a while, Lucas wished to accept this explanation. He desired to believe that his growing unease was simply a product of his own insecurities. The firm where Lucas worked was a significant source of his professional pride. He had risen through the ranks from an assistant, gradually earning the esteem and trust of his superiors. Their leader, Jonathan, was an influential man, renowned for his leadership style that blended authority with charm. He was someone everyone aspired to impress, and Lucas was no exception. Jonathan was a visionary, skilled at transforming a company into a dominant brand. Lucas held respect from his employees and admiration from many, including Emily, who frequently praised him as an exceptional leader. Yet, Lucas harbored periods of doubt. Although he rarely questioned people's motives, there was something enigmatic about Jonathan that he couldn't fully comprehend. Perhaps it was the seemingly insincere smiles or his knack for controlling a crowd, convincing them to agree with him even when his suggestions were questionable. Jonathan led, yet he also played games, and Lucas was aware of this. I hadn't anticipated the depths of that game. Life continued in its usual pattern, with Lucas and Emily maintaining an appearance of normalcy at public events, exchanging smiles and casual chats. However, once they returned home, their facade would shatter into a heavy silence that seemed to fill every nook and cranny of the apartment. An unspoken stress pervaded, a feeling undetectable to others but palpably present and oppressive. Lucas found himself ensnared in a quandary, deciding whether to challenge Emily, seek clarification, or persist in feigning normalcy. In the days preceding the corporate gathering, Lucas observed alterations in the office dynamics. Jonathan became more aloof, reticent, and avoided eye contact with him. The friendly greetings they typically shared had transformed into brief, formal acknowledgments. It was as if a frozen barrier had emerged between them, and Lucas wasn't sure whether it was merely his suspicion or something more profound. Emily, on the other hand, appeared more exhilarated than ever for the event, arranging details, selecting the ideal dress, as though this function offered an opportunity to break free from the tension that ruled her home. And then, the night of the party finally came. The lights gleamed vibrantly, mirroring off the guests' champagne flutes and shimmering garments. The setup was impeccably arranged, radiating the refined ambience Emily preferred. Lucas observed her circulating in the room, welcoming guests, chuckling, seemingly the epitome of a gracious hostess. From a distance, he spotted Jonathan with his peers, his smile looking contrived. Despite trying to suppress it, an unease crept up on him. He sensed an impending event, yet couldn't discern its nature. The evening unfolded like any typical corporate gathering, cheers, speeches, and a festive atmosphere softening the tension. However, for Lucas, each smile, every shared glance in the room seemed charged with a significance he struggled to decode. He had resolved that this night would be pivotal, and as he clutched a flute of champagne, his gaze sweeping across the crowd, he understood that whatever transpired from then on, there was no going back. As the evening unfolded, the event proceeded according to plan, radiating the elegance of a well-executed gathering. Lucas keenly observed every action, every gesture Emily made throughout the room. She was breathtaking, her laughter flowing effortlessly as she engaged in conversation with peers and acquaintances. It was almost unthinkable that beneath her radiance, a widening rift existed, a sense of distance he felt daily, a gap gradually emerging between them. For weeks he tried to discern the source of this disconnect, any alteration. That night, however, he knew he required clarity, even if it arrived in a harsh manner. He subtly moved away from the party hubbub, seeking a quieter vantage point to scrutinize better. Jonathan was present as well, enveloped by a group of colleagues who reveled in his humor and tales. Yet, there was an odd quality to his conduct that seemed atypical, as if his usual bravado had given way to a subtle warning. Lucas observed him evading eye contact, looking elsewhere whenever their gazes locked. This observation confirmed his suspicions that had been growing over the past few days. He had spotted Jonathan leaving work at uncommon hours and once, under the cover of night, glimpsed Emily beside him, entering a vehicle he recognized wasn't hers. Despite trying to engage with colleagues during the party, Lucas found himself preoccupied, his thoughts entangled by an invisible bond linking Emily's actions and words to Jonathan. He recalled the initial days spent with her, appreciating how she always seemed to compliment him. Emily was adept at choosing her words, capable of brightening any room, and he took pride in her company. However, watching her from a distance now, he questioned whether he truly knew her or if the woman who smiled and captivated everyone was merely a mask. He resolved to approach her more closely, gradually merging into the group she was part of. Initially, Emily didn't recognize him. She was engrossed in a vivacious chat with a colleague. Once she spotted him, her smile had a fleeting hint of astonishment before she recovered, asking, "Are you all right?" in a casual manner. Lucas acknowledged with a nod and a smile, mentioning he just wanted to check on Emily's enjoyment. Jonathan joined Emily soon after, his cheerfulness contrasting with a stern glance directed at Lucas. "So, Lucas, how do you find the party? Emily had done an impressive job organizing it, right?" Lucas nodded once more, observing the back and forth between the two, their swift glances exchanging some unseen message. For a brief moment, Jonathan seemed composed, but there was an underlying tension as if he was poised to respond immediately. Eventually, Lucas strayed from the group, his mind in turmoil. Desperate for conclusive evidence, he needed validation for his mounting suspicions. For weeks, doubts had been eating away at him, that persistent sense of unease about something occurring beyond his grasp. However, this night, he was resolute he could no longer tolerate the uncertainty, and if there was ever a moment to face the truth, it was now. The party continued unabated when Lucas made up his mind to depart from the crowd and embark on a walk. He yearned for clarity, but also knew that any answers would lie beyond the confines of the controlled setting. He traversed the corridor, past dimly lit meeting rooms and locked offices, until he detected voices emanating from a room at the hall's end. He recognized Emily's voice, even though it was hushed, as if they were engaged in a clandestine conversation. Pausing momentarily, he hesitated perhaps his mind was deceiving him, finding betrayal where there was none. In the next instance, Jonathan's voice sounded, causing Luca's heart to quicken. Despite knowing he shouldn't be present, spying like an unsure adolescent, an unseen force propelled him forward. Moving cautiously, he neared the partially open door and peered out. There, Emily and Jonathan stood together, closer than what appeared professional, exchanging hushed words that Lucas couldn't quite discern. However, it was enough to see their subtle touches and the way their hands intertwined. Emily's soft laughter echoed, a sound he hadn't heard in a while, and it felt like a blow. He retreated, struggling to comprehend what he had just witnessed. The rhythm of his heart throbbed in his ears, and a swirling emotion of anger and sorrow threatened to consume him. For a brief moment, he contemplated storming into that room, challenging them on the spot, but decided discretion was prudent. He didn't desire to let the situation slip from his grasp. He made his way back to the room, taking in deep breaths, searching for a means to mask the tumultuous feelings engulfing him. Upon entering the grand hall, he encountered a cluster of coworkers and compelled himself to mingle with them, as if nothing untoward had transpired. However, every laugh, every whispered conversation around him felt distant, muted. He waited, uncertain of what, until he spotted Emily returning to the room, smoothing her dress and attempting to maintain her usual composure. Yet, for Lucas, she was no longer the same. He had witnessed enough to comprehend the scenario, to acknowledge that the woman he adored, the woman he had shared numerous years with, was entangled in something he could never forgive. The gathering was beginning to wind down when it dawned on him that he could no longer prolong the confrontation. He traversed towards the center of the room, picked up a flute of champagne, and requested the microphone. A brief hush filled the room as eyes turned towards him, mixed with surprise and curiosity. After a moment's pause, he spoke, his voice strong yet carrying an enigmatic weight uncomprehended by those present. "I wish to express my gratitude to each of you for joining us tonight," he initiated, a smile seeming incongruous on his face. "Particularly to my wife for her tireless efforts in making this gathering happen. She truly immersed herself in ensuring everything was flawless." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air before continuing. Alas, perfection wasn't as widespread as it appeared. Emily, positioned beside Jonathan, gazed at him, baffled and apprehensive. "Lucas, what are you doing?" she murmured softly, but he chose to disregard her. "I'm here to announce that I'm filing for divorce," he announced, causing a gasp of astonishment to ripple through the crowd. "The reason is straightforward. My wife is involved in an affair with her superior." This revelation crashed through the veneer of normality everyone was attempting to uphold. The room hushed uneasily, and Lucas observed as everyone struggled to comprehend the recent revelation. He noticed Emily's widened eyes, Jonathan's pallor, and in that instant, everything seemed to solidify. He let go of the microphone, allowing his words to reverberate throughout the room, and departed, knowing that whatever followed would merely be the commencement of something far greater. The auditorium was filled with a tense and unsettling quietness after Lucas' declaration. For a brief moment, it seemed as if time had stopped. Every gaze was directed at him, Emily, and Jonathan, anticipating a response that might clarify their recent experience. Emily appeared stunned, her complexion drained, searching for the appropriate words, but none emerged. In contrast, Jonathan preserved a stiff demeanor, his gaze fixed on the floor, unable to meet others' eyes. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the festive ambience that once filled the room now felt smothering. Lucas discarded the microphone and departed, experiencing the burden of the choice he'd made. The moment he'd anticipated for weeks had arrived, with each word meticulously prepared, but now that it was spoken, a potent blend of relief and a throbbing ache pervading his chest ensued. He cast one last glance at Emily before swiveling and departing the room, knowing he left everyone astonished, yet uncaring, as if all strength to sustain the facade of control had been depleted. Emily, in disbelief, endeavored to react. "That's a lie," she bellowed, her voice reverberating through the room. However, no one appeared persuaded. The hushed whispers of curiosity and conjecture among the guests began to ripple like a wave. Emily pursued him frantically, disregarding the eyes that followed her, aiming to catch up before he vanished via the exit doors. Jonathan remained motionless, paralyzed, as if ensnared in his own terror and embarrassment. Lucas found himself in a moment he had long evaded, and the truth surfaced in an uncontrollable manner. He continued walking until he reached a quiet hallway where party noise faded into a distant hum. Emily eventually joined him, gripping his arm firmly, making him turn to face her. His eyes were filled with tears, but there was more despair, repressed rage. "How could you do that?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." He gazed at her for a moment, his eyes lifeless and emotionless. "How could I?" he repeated, his voice low, almost inaudible. "Are you asking how I could do this? Emily, are you asking how I could do this to you?" "With our lives," she responded. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said weakly, but her words lacked conviction. Lucas chuckled bitterly. "Don't you understand? You don't, do you? You shouldn't add more hurt to our current situation, Lucas. I saw you with him, Emily, and not just once. I had hoped it was all mistaken, a misunderstanding, but today has shown me otherwise. What I presumed could remain hidden for so long has been exposed in a single night." Emily released his arm and took a step back, hiding her mouth behind her hands. She understood your seriousness, and now the truth was finally dawning on her. The secret she had tried to keep hidden for such a long time was shattered in one night. Lucas observed the tears sliding down her face, but he didn't feel remorse. There was only coldness, an insurmountable barrier he could no longer breach. "I apologize, Lucas. I didn't intend for things to unfold this way," she started, her voice trembling. "But that's not what you believe. Jonathan and we." She trailed off, struggling to find the appropriate explanation. "We were perplexed. It was an error. An error, he countered, his voice growing a little, filled with astonishment. Forgetting to get bread from the market is an oversight. However, your actions were conscious decisions repeated numerous times in secret. It was Jonathan who emerged from the room, seeking them out. He halted upon seeing the two of you together, their faces showing tension and paleness. "Lucas," he began, struggling to keep his composure, yet his words faded. "We need to discuss this matter, and I apologize sincerely." "This situation has spiraled out of control," Lucas replied, concealing his growing rage, a sentiment he had harbored for quite some time. "Are you truly sorry?" he asked, closing the gap between them until only inches separated their faces. "You hold a position over me, yet you believed it justified to sabotage my marriage. And now you expect, and I'm sorry, to fix everything." Jonathan tried to respond, but found no suitable words. His mind kept dwelling on how the circumstance was slipping away from him, and he was unsure how to rectify the predicament. Emily surveyed both of them, her eyes beseeching, attempting to intervene in a situation beyond her grasp. "Stop this, please," she implored. "I acknowledge my mistake, but it doesn't have to end like this. Lucas, we need to converse, just the two of us. We can return home and settle this privately," she pleaded. Lucas emitted a brief, cynical chuckle that reverberated through the quietness. "Privately? Now you want to solve everything in private, after betraying me, after causing such distress to someone I relied on, who I worked alongside every day." He nodded his head, feeling the burden of his own utterances. "No, Emily, there's nothing left between us to be resolved." The ensuing silence was thick, laden with unsaid words. Jonathan gazed at Emily, anticipating a comment that might alter the situation, but she remained mute, merely weeping softly. Lucas was about to depart, yet something held him back. He fixed his gaze on Jonathan, his eyes icy and resolute. "What's the most ironic part of this situation?" he said, his tone a mix of fury and an unusual calmness. "I wasn't the only one observing the situation. One of the directors observed you together on several occasions as well. Now he is scrutinizing all your activities within the company. He has evidence, Jonathan, and very soon everyone will learn that not only are you an unfaithful boss, but also a corrupt one." Jonathan stiffened. "What are you referring to?" His voice faltered, and a shiver ran down his spine. "That's false. This cannot be true. It simply cannot." Lucas moved closer, his voice softer yet filled with intensity that caused Jonathan to retreat. "I wasn't going to let this slide, Jonathan. You damaged something valuable to me, and now it's your turn to face the repercussions as well." Jonathan paled at the sight of this. Emily stared at him in puzzlement, seeking to decipher Lucas' words. "What does he mean, Jonathan?" she asked, concern clear in her tone. "What else have you concealed?" Jonathan remained silent, merely standing there, unable to grasp the unfolding situation. For months, he had managed the storyline, adjusted circumstances to suit him. But now, with Lucas revealing the deceit and hinting at something far more ominous, he understood that his control was slipping away. "Lucas, that's unnecessary. We can resolve this differently. We don't have to destroy everything," Jonathan pleaded, attempting to preserve a composure he lacked. "Ah, but it's necessary," Lucas retorted, stepping back. "And it's already destroyed, Jonathan. You destroyed everything the moment you believed you could toy with my life without consequences, and now I'll ensure you face them." Lucas strode away down the corridor, leaving Jonathan and Emily rooted in their falsehoods and desolation. He recognized this moment as the start of their inevitable demise, and anticipated that forthcoming disclosures would bring about far greater devastation than just a marriage's collapse. The night air bit into him, enveloping him tightly like an uncomfortable embrace. His physical weight seemed amplified, burdened by decades of accumulated torment and dissatisfaction. He had long evaded conflict, but now that he had spoken his truth, the agony did not abate. On the contrary, it felt more tangible than ever. He had bared all, unveiled betrayals and concealed facts, yet a void still persisted. The truth, while liberating, lacked the instantaneous healing power of the wounds it inflicted. As Lucas strolled along the vacant sidewalk, Distancing himself from the dim lights and muffled melodies of the gathering, his mind swirled with an array of thoughts. Aware that his act of revealing Jonathan and Emily would bear consequences surpassing his marital discord, he braced for the impending collapse of the boss's public persona, tarnishing a man previously regarded as a capable leader. Yet, there was a certain melancholic feeling enveloping him. It seemed as if he felt not merely betrayed, but intent on ensuring others suffered alongside him when his life crumbled. Meanwhile, Jonathan lingered in the hallway for what appeared an eternity following Lucas' exit. Emily kept her gaze fixed on him, seeking any clue of a response, some gesture that could illuminate the chaos she had just been confronted with. She understood the magnitude of her error, but remained oblivious to the storm brewing ahead. "Jonathan," she whispered, uncertainty creeping into her tone, "could you clarify what you meant by that investigation? Is it true?" Jonathan, maintaining his composure with difficulty, gazed at Emily, revealing a fear he had not previously displayed this evening. His eyes betrayed a growing panic. "Yes, it's true," he confessed, his voice trembling. "They're scrutinizing certain internal procedures, alterations I made to maintain the financial status." He couldn't meet her gaze, burdened by guilt. "I believed I could manage it, thought nobody would find out." Emily stared back at him, stunned. She assumed that their betrayal would incur the most severe repercussions, but now there seemed to be a more ominous and unforeseen problem. "Jonathan," she exclaimed, her voice filled with urgency, "this could dismantle everything. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you allow me to assume it was merely us twosome?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I believed I could resolve it, mend everything before it turned into an issue." Yet, Lucas understood my intentions, and he leveraged that knowledge against me. His aim was to ensure if I ruined his life, I would destroy mine in retaliation. A weighty dilemma hung heavy in the air. Emily felt conflicted between guilt for her actions and fear of what could still transpire. She had chosen Jonathan for reasons she hardly comprehended herself. Perhaps it was the allure of the forbidden, the yearning to break free from a monotonous existence that suffocated her, or simply his charm, which contrasted sharply with Lucas's steady constancy. However, confronting the repercussions, she understood that this choice could endanger everyone. "What are our next steps?" she questioned, and for the first time, her voice rang hopeless, as if she were speaking to a stranger. Jonathan was unable to provide an answer. He had spent years climbing his career, skillfully shaping circumstances to benefit him, only to see it crumbling now. "I am uncertain," he conceded, his voice trembling more than he desired. "But I won't let this demolish me. I won't let him triumph." Simultaneously, outside, his adversary, Lucas, paused at a neighboring bench, surrendering to its embrace as he gazed into nothingness. He acknowledged that he had squandered everything, comprehending the potentially catastrophic repercussions of his actions. Yet, there was an odd sense of tranquility enveloping him, as if he had ultimately accomplished something significant after years of self-sacrifice for others. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he considered ignoring it until he noticed the name of one of the company's directors flashing on the screen. "Lucas," said the voice from the other end, tense, "I learned about the incident at the party. Did you truly unveil everything, aware of the havoc it could wreak?" Lucas hesitated for a moment before responding. "Indeed, my suspicions were confirmed. Yet they coerced me into this predicament, forcing me to maintain a facade of normality. If Jonathan is implicated in actions detrimental to the company, then it's high time these truths are exposed. Aren't you aware that this isn't merely an ordinary matter?" The director continued, whispering, seemingly ensuring privacy. "If his operations are scrutinized and corruption is discovered, the entire company might face repercussions. This will not solely affect Jonathan. It will touch everyone." Lucas closed his eyes, feeling the gravity of the situation. He understood he was embarking on a risky path, but retreat was no longer an option. "What's your recommendation?" The director added that I remain silent and allow him to continue as if nothing transpired. "I recommend you weigh the potential repercussions," the director advised me. "For sometimes, bringing down one person can mean dismantling everything associated with them." Your actions might not just be harmful to the one who betrayed you. This fact didn't immediately resonate with Lucas. The concept was poignant, yet the idea of Jonathan escaping retribution was intolerable. For weeks, he had borne his pain in secret while both maintained a charade, masking their dishonesty beneath a veneer of normalcy. Now, confronted with the dilemma that his retaliation might bring ruin, he found himself ensnared in an insoluble quandary. Was it about justice or devastation? The ethical dilemma thickened, and Lucas understood that, at heart, the choice wasn't as straightforward as he wished. He yearned for justice, but how far was he prepared to go to attain it? Would he transform into a villain in his pursuit of exposing one? As he ended the call, the quiet around him seemed oppressive. The gathering was breaking up, and he saw some leaving, still murmuring and casting glances back as if waiting for something else to unfold. Emily and Jonathan remained indoors, likely attempting to mend a predicament destined for escalation. The onus of the next step fell upon Lucas, yet he pondered how far he was prepared to venture to rectify the situation. A heavy stillness pervaded the following day, as though the atmosphere harbored an imminent eruption. Lucas chose not to return home that night. Instead, he spent the pre-dawn hours wandering deserted streets, seeking tranquility for his restless mind. The recollections and glances from the prior evening persisted, and he was aware that his actions had ignited a chain of events beyond repair. As dawn approached, he made a choice that would mark the conclusion of this narrative. Subsequently, the workplace buzzed with activity. Whispers circulated in the corridors, and the news about Jonathan's indiscretion at the party rapidly disseminated. Employees were caught between curiosity and unease, as if anticipating a revelation. Earlier than normal, Jonathan entered the office, his visage taut with weariness and concern. He felt the need to act swiftly to salvage whatever remnants of his reputation remained, but he sensed his grip on controls slipping away. That's when he received the call he had been dreading. The board had decided to initiate an official inquiry into their operations. Someone, whom he knew all too well, had supplied sufficient information for the company to warrant an audit. "This can't be happening to me," he said, his voice strained during a meeting with one of the directors. "Everything I did was for the company's benefit. You know that." But the director simply looked at him with calculated coolness. "Maybe you should have considered that before mingling your ambitions with deceit, Jonathan. It's too late now." In the meantime, Lucas was with his attorney, finalizing divorce papers. He realized this was the sole path for liberating himself from all the anguish inflicted upon him. Emily repeatedly attempted to reach out to him, pleading for a chance to clarify, but by then he could no longer listen to her words. Each utterance, every apology, resonated hollowly, as if nothing could mend the emptiness she had wrought. The betrayal was merely the tip of the iceberg, yet the fact is that he lost the woman he cherished far earlier than when he uncovered the affair. "Lucas," she left a message, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I know I made a mistake, but we can rectify it. Please get in touch with me." But he remained silent. He had reached his threshold, and no words she spoke could undo what had already been shattered. The divorce documents were merely a formalization of something that was already fractured long before. Jonathan found himself grappling with the disintegration of his life. As the internal inquiry unfolded, long-kept secrets started to emerge. These were not mere anomalies, they were acts of fraud, disclosure of which could potentially plunge the company into a major scandal, and he knew that Lucas had divulged the most damaging information. For years, Jonathan had manipulated circumstances to maintain his position, but now every wrong move he made seemed to be catching up with him. He tried to anticipate the issue, reaching out to allies, proposing deals, but the evidence was amassing at an unmanageable pace. It was then that he resorted to a desperate measure. Aware of the impending scandal, Jonathan convened a press conference. His intention was to admit to some administrative errors and attempt to steer the narrative. However, while he was speaking, with a confidence no longer convincing anyone, the Internal Investigation Department publicly announced their findings, exposing all the fraud and irregularities. It was a complete unveiling, leaving no room for redemption. Jonathan's career was devastated, and he understood that he would lose far more than just his role. Imminent financial and legal ruin was unavoidable. Emily, too, felt the impact. She discovered herself abruptly estranged. Those who had previously filled her social circle began to shun her, as if her connection with Jonathan and the scandal were infectious. No matter how hard she tried to clarify, no one seemed inclined to listen. To them, she was merely a character in a public drama that everyone wished to forget. She lost her job, her social standing, and the possibilities of rebuilding her life appeared further away than ever. Her decision to be unfaithful to Lucas not only wrecked her marriage, but also the reputation she had carefully crafted over years. In the end, she was left deserted, bearing the weight of her actions' aftermath. Lucas, however, found a new path to progress. Despite the lingering agony of betrayal, he acknowledged that life beyond his previous marriage was not an end to everything. Following challenging weeks, he decided to depart from the city, taking up a leadership position in a distant company, distancing himself from all that had turned toxic. He understood that harboring resentment would only confine him in the past, and for the first time in months, he felt prepared for something fresh and undefined by his past deceits. In retrospect, the shock of disclosures brought severe repercussions for everyone involved. Jonathan, who appeared invincible, was terminated and faced lawsuits from not only the company, but also investors who felt deceived by his fraudulent conduct. He lost everything and now confronted an unpredictable and dismal future. Emily, who thought she had discovered a new interest, found herself estranged and abandoned, recognizing too late that her decisions came at a steep cost. Despite being scarred by past events, Lucas discovered a path to liberation, advancing and reconstructing his life without the deceit that once shrouded him. Deceit corroded everything around Luke, and lies ultimately led to ruin. In the end, each individual's decisions molded their fate, and though painful, truth inevitably brought resolution for all. Lucas ventured into an unpredictable future, now feeling a resemblance he hadn't felt in a while, leaving behind a past of treachery that no longer held sway over him. If you enjoyed this tale, share your thoughts on each character's conclusion in the comments. We are eager to hear your reactions to these stunning disclosures. And remember to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Here, we oppose any form of betrayal. Each tale serves as a reminder of how such actions can devastate lives and trust-based relationships. Until next time, thank you for your attention.